Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Speak Better English podcast.
Yeah.
We have a truly fascinating exploration ahead of us today.
You really do.
And I want to be very clear right from the start. This conversation is crafted specifically for you.
Especially for you listening right now.
Exactly. If you are a non-native English speaker who is navigating the sometimes overwhelming, sometimes deeply frustrating journey of learning this language, you are in exactly the right place.
It is an incredibly intense journey.
It is. We know that trying to learn a new language as an adult can often feel trying to drink water from a fire hose.
So,
the pressure's just intense.
right.
There are endless vocabulary lists to look at. There are these incredibly complex grammar rules to memorize. And there are countless textbook exercises that somehow never seem to match up with how real people actually talk when you step out onto the street.
They rarely do match up.
You spend hours studying, right?
Yeah.
But then you go to a coffee shop or a networking event, and the English you hear sounds completely different from the English in your books.
It sounds like a completely different language sometimes.
Our mission today is to cut through all of that noise and all that confusion. We're going to look at a highly specific, carefully curated approach to learning English naturally, easily, and above all, effectively.
And efficiently.
Yes. We are examining some very intriguing excerpts from a source text titled Mastering Essential Phrasal Verbs for Daily Dialogue.
A very powerful title.
Very. And within this source, our entire focus for this deep dive is on the topic categorized simply as everyday phrasal verbs.
Every day.
And it is specifically targeted at the beginner level. We're going to extract the core insights on how to approach this critical aspect of English without feeling crushed by the weight of information overload. Okay, let's unpack this. We have a very brief but incredibly dense set of instructions to decode today.
We certainly have a lot to uncover, because what makes this source material so compelling is not just what it tells us to do, but what the specific word choices reveal about the psychology of how we actually learn languages.
The psychology is the key here.
Exactly. We are exploring a framework that the source titles 10 Phrasal Verbs You Need. Use them in real conversations.
It's a very direct hit.
Very direct. And additionally, we are going to analyze a specific visual cue mentioned in the text, which is an overlay simply stating phrasal verbs.
Right.
Now, while this might seem a straightforward title and a basic video editing note at first glance, when we look closer, when we really analyze it, we find a highly sophisticated strategy for rapid, practical language learning.
A strategy that bypasses the old methods.
Yes. This framework is deliberately designed to bypass the traditional and often very ineffective methods of rote memorization. Instead, it aims to hardwire essential communication skills directly into your daily interactions.
I want to stop right there. I want to focus on that distinction between traditional learning and this targeted methodology, because that is exactly where we need to start. Let's deconstruct the overarching title of the source material. Mastering Essential Phrasal Verbs for Daily Dialogue.
Every word matters there.
Every single word in that title carries significant weight. It points to a very specific philosophy. Let's look at the very first word, mastering.
Mastering.
The source doesn't say memorizing.
No, it doesn't.
It doesn't say studying, and it certainly doesn't say reviewing. It specifically demands mastering. In the context of learning a language, those concepts represent entirely different universes of understanding, don't they?
They absolutely do, and it's a critical observation to make early on. The choice of the word mastering points to a specific psychological and neurological state that we call automaticity.
Automaticity. Let's break that down into simple terms for the listener.
Absolutely. When you merely memorize a word for a test, it sits in your short-term memory or your passive vocabulary. You might recognize it when you read it on a page, or you might be able to successfully recall it on a multiple choice exam.
Because you have the time to think about it.
Exactly. But in a real live conversation, that memorized word requires a conscious, effortful mental process to retrieve.
You have to dig for it.
You do. You have to pause the conversation, search your mental dictionary, translate the concept from your native language into English, check the grammar rules, and then finally attempt to speak it out loud.
And by that time, the conversation has moved on.
It has. That entire process takes time. And in a fast-paced conversation, time is a luxury you rarely have. Mastery, on the other hand, implies that the language has completely bypassed that conscious translation process.
It becomes instinct.
Yes. It means the language has become effortless. It is automatic. When you truly master a linguistic structure, you don't think about the individual parts or the grammar rules behind it. You simply use the concept as a single fluid unit of meaning.
It's just there when you need it.
Precisely. For a non-native speaker, making this transition from conscious, stressful translation to unconscious, natural competence is the ultimate goal. And it's precisely what this source is demanding from the very first word.
That makes perfect sense. I mean, it's the exact difference between knowing the mechanical physics of how a bicycle works and actually riding the bicycle down a busy street.
That's a great analogy.
When you're just learning, you're thinking about your balance, your pedaling speed, the angle of the handlebars. It's exhausting.
You're overthinking every movement.
But when you've mastered it, you don't think about any of that. You just ride. You enjoy the scenery. Your body takes over.
Oh.
So what does this all mean for the phrase daily dialogue?
Well, the source couples this intense concept of mastery directly with daily dialogue.
Right. It seems to me that it's deliberately steering the learner away from formal academic English or for the kind of rigid, perfectly structured sentences you find in traditional textbooks.
That's exactly what it's doing. Daily dialogue is how people actually speak when they are buying a cup of coffee, chatting with a coworker in the break room, or asking a stranger for directions on the street.
It's the real world.
It is casual, it is fast, and it relies heavily on these multi-word verb structures that we are discussing today.
The ones that textbooks often ignore.
Yes. If you want to sound like a natural speaker, rather than a walking dictionary or a formal news broadcaster, daily dialogue is the specific target you have to hit.
Because traditional education often fails there.
It fails completely. It prepares students to read classic literature or write formal business reports, but it completely neglects the messy, casual reality of spoken English. The source is correcting that imbalance.
I want to push back on that just a little bit, or at least play devil's advocate for the listener.
Go ahead.
A lot of learners might think, well, if I learn the formal academic English, shouldn't that be enough? Won't people still understand me? Why is it so crucial to focus on the casual daily dialogue instead of the proper textbook English?
It's a very common question, and it's completely understandable why a learner would think that way.
Because that's what we're taught in school.
Right. And yes, if you use highly formal textbook English, native speakers will technically understand the words you are saying.
They'll get the message.
They will. However, communication is about much more than just exchanging data. It's about connection.
Connection.
It's about fitting into the social rhythm of a situation. If you use highly formal language in a casual setting, it creates a subtle barrier.
It feels cold.
It sounds unnatural. It can make the conversation feel stiff or awkward. Imagine a native speaker asking you a casual question about your weekend, and you reply using vocabulary that sounds, it belongs in a legal contract.
Right. I participated in a recreational event of significant enjoyment.
Exactly. It disrupts the flow. Mastering daily dialogue allows you to blend in, to build rapport, and to connect with people on a human level. It removes the awkwardness and allows your true personality to shine through.
That's a great way to frame it. It's about social connection, not just grammatical correctness. Now, let's look at the word essential in that title.
What's fascinating here is the introduction of this word into the equation.
The word essential.
Yes. The source is explicitly stating that not all language is created equal.
That is a huge relief to hear.
It should be. Traditional language education often treats vocabulary as a massive, uniform ocean of words that you must somehow swallow whole.
Memorize the entire dictionary.
Exactly. You are given lists of hundreds of verbs, many of which are highly specific or rarely used in real life. But by framing this learning around essential structures for daily dialogue, the source is acknowledging a fundamental truth, isn't it?
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's acknowledging what we often call the Pareto principle.
The 80-20 rule.
Right. The 80-20 rule applied to linguistics. There is a core foundation of high-frequency language that does the vast majority of the heavy lifting in everyday communication.
The heavy lifting.
Think about your own daily life. You perform hundreds of actions, but you probably use the same small group of words to describe them most of the time.
We repeat ourselves constantly.
The source implies that if you identify and isolate these essential tools, you don't need to learn the entire dictionary to be highly functional and fluent in daily situations. You just need to master the right tools.
It's incredibly empowering.
Because it tells the learner that fluency isn't about knowing everything. It's about knowing the most important things perfectly.
Knowing the most important things perfectly. That is a brilliant way to summarize it.
I love that. Fluency isn't about knowing everything. It's about knowing the most important things perfectly. That is a massive relief. And that brings us directly to the specific topic constraint of our source material, which explicitly labels this focus as everyday phrasal verbs and categorizes it strictly for the beginner.
The beginner.
Let's spend some time talking about the psychological state of the beginner persona, because I think it's something that isn't discussed enough.
It's often ignored.
If you are listening to this right now, you know exactly what I mean. Stepping into a new language is incredibly daunting.
It takes a tremendous amount of vulnerability.
Yes. You are a smart, capable adult in your native language. You have complex thoughts, a sense of humor, professional expertise.
You have an established identity.
But when you start learning English, you suddenly feel a child again. You can't express your nuance. You feel you are losing your personality.
It's incredibly frustrating.
And then, just when you think you're getting the hang of basic verbs, you encounter these specific two-part or three-part verb structures in English, and the difficulty spikes dramatically.
They are notoriously frustrating for beginners, and for a very good reason.
Why is that?
Their meanings are almost never literal. You can't just look at the action word and the small direction word attached to it and guess the meaning based on logic.
Right. Logic completely goes out the window.
It really does. They function as entirely new, illogical vocabulary words disguised as simple verbs. Your brain is desperately trying to apply logical rules, but these specific combinations often defy direct translation.
It feels like a trap.
The cognitive load placed on a beginner when facing these structures is immense. It's no wonder people feel overwhelmed.
Exactly. It feels unfair. You learn the word for a basic action, you learn a preposition, and you put them together and it means something completely unrelated to either word.
It feels English is playing a trick on you.
So how does the source text handle this frustration? It handles it by strictly defining the topic as everyday usage.
Yes, and this is where the brilliant pedagogical strategy comes into play. By framing the topic around everyday contexts, the source provides immense psychological relief.
It gives you permission to ignore things.
Explicit permission. It gives the learner explicit permission to ignore the thousands of obscure, complex, or academic combinations that exist in the English language.
You don't need them right now.
It says essentially you don't need to worry about the complex language used in a corporate legal document, a medical journal, or a classic novel right now.
You just need the basics.
You only need to focus on the language spoken on the street. This immediate narrowing of the field transforms an impossible mountain into a scalable hill.
It's telling someone who is learning to cook that they don't need to master a 5-course French dinner on their first day. They just need to learn how to make a really good, simple omelet.
A simple, perfect omelet.
The relief is palpable. Because when beginners try to tackle everything at once, what happens? They end up freezing.
They freeze entirely.
Or, if they do speak, they speak in this very robotic, overly formal way. Because they are relying on direct one-to-one translations from their native language.
The translation trap.
Right. They will search their brain for a highly formal Latin-based verb because it sounds similar to a word in their native language instead of using the natural, casual two-part structure that a native English speaker would use in the exact same situation.
That is such a common phenomenon. I want to direct a thought to you, the listener, right now. What stands out to you when you try to speak English?
Think about it.
I want you to really visualize a recent conversation you had. Do you find yourself pausing in the middle of a sentence, mentally flipping through a dictionary to find one complex, formal word to describe an action?
We've all been there.
Meanwhile, you notice native speakers seamlessly using simple, combined action words to express the exact same thought without any effort at all. That hesitation you feel, that mental searching, is what we call the translation trap.
Let's dive deeper into this translation trap because I think it's the biggest hurdle for our listeners. Let me paint a picture.
Please do.
You are at a casual lunch with colleagues. Someone asks you a simple question about your plans for the weekend. In your native language, you would answer instantly with a joke or a quick story.
Instantly, without thinking.
But in English, you hear the question, and your brain goes into overdrive. You formulate the answer in your native language first, then you start translating it word by word.
Word by painful word.
You hit an action you want to describe. You search for the English equivalent. You find a big formal word you learned in a textbook. You check the past tense conjugation. You finally speak the sentence.
And then what happens?
By the time you've done all that mental gymnastics, the conversation has already moved on. The moment is gone. You feel defeated, even though you technically constructed a perfect sentence.
That is a heartbreakingly accurate description of the beginner's experience, and it highlights exactly why this source material is so valuable.
It really does.
The beginner mindset, as outlined by this source, requires acknowledging that to sound natural, you must stop trying to sound complicated.
Stop trying to sound smart.
Yes, you must embrace the simple, everyday structures that actually drive spoken English. It requires a massive shift in your personal values regarding language learning.
A shift in values? How so?
You have to start placing natural flow, rhythm, and immediate comprehension above formal grammatical perfection. You have to be willing to use simple tools to build your sentences rather than searching for the perfect, complex tool and missing the opportunity to speak altogether.
It's a shift from wanting to sound smart to wanting to sound natural. And ironically, sounding natural is what actually makes you sound fluent and competent.
The irony is very real.
So if focusing on everyday language lowers that anxiety and helps us avoid the translation trap, how do we actually start? We need a concrete plan. And that brings us to the next part of our analysis. Here's where it gets really interesting.
The exact mechanics.
We move from the overarching philosophy into the exact mechanics of the source title, 10 phrasal verbs you need.
Just 10.
The source doesn't offer 50. It doesn't offer a comprehensive A to Z dictionary of every two-part verb in the English language. It draws a hard, undeniable line in the sand and gives us the magic number 10.
A very specific boundary.
There has to be a profound psychological and strategic reason behind this specific limitation, right? Why not 20? Why not 100?
There is a very specific reason, and it's rooted in cognitive psychology. This is a masterclass in the pedagogy of chunking and cognitive load management.
Chunking. Let's break those terms down so they're easy to digest.
Absolutely. Information overload is the absolute enemy of the non-native speaker. The human brain, specifically our working memory, has severe limitations on how much new information it can hold and process simultaneously.
It's a small space.
Think of your working memory, a small whiteboard in your mind. You can only write so many things on it before it gets messy and you have to erase something.
Right.
If a textbook gives you a list of 50 new expressions to learn all at once, your brain simply cannot consolidate them. It cannot move them from the temporary whiteboard into long-term memory, let alone achieve the automaticity we discussed earlier.
Right. If you try to memorize 50 things at once, you might remember them for the test on Friday, but by Monday morning, 45 of them are gone.
They vanish.
It's incredibly inefficient.
Exactly. You will experience cognitive fatigue, immense frustration, and ultimately, you will likely abandon the effort altogether because you feel you aren't making real progress.
You burn out.
This is where the concept of chunking comes in. Chunking is the process of taking large amounts of information and breaking it down into smaller, manageable pieces or chunks.
Just giving the brain what it can handle.
It's why phone numbers are broken up with dashes. A string of 10 numbers is hard to remember, but 3 small chunks of numbers are manageable. By restricting the focus to exactly 10 essential structures, the source is utilizing highly effective psychological strategy.
It makes it possible.
It provides a highly achievable, bite-sized milestone. 10 is a number that feels manageable to the human brain. You can mentally map 10 items. You can practice 10 items in a single week.
It's realistic.
It transforms an overwhelming, abstract academic task into a highly specific, achievable mission.
It creates a sense of empowerment. When a learner looks at a list of 100 things, they feel defeated before they even begin.
Completely defeated.
But when you look at a list of 10, you think, I can do this. I can absolutely conquer these 10. I can practice 2 a day for 5 days.
It builds momentum.
It builds momentum. But I want to look closely at the rest of that phrase. The title goes much further than just limiting the number. It uses a very strong, very specific word to categorize them. It says, these are 10 verbs you need.
Need, not want.
Right. It doesn't say these are 10 verbs that are fun to know, or 10 verbs you might use on a holiday, or 10 verbs to make you sound highly educated. It categorizes them as absolute, fundamental necessities. That word need feels very intentional.
It's incredibly intentional. That phrasing is a powerful motivational tool. By using the word need, the source injects a sense of urgency and absolute prioritization into the learning process.
It forces you to pay attention.
It tells the learner that these specific 10 items are non-negotiable for everyday survival in the English language. In the field of language acquisition, this is deeply related to the concept of high-value learning.
High-value learning.
Let me explain how the brain processes value. When a learner believes that the material they are studying is just theoretical or only useful for a distant exam, the brain doesn't prioritize it.
It files it away as unimportant.
Exactly. But when a learner believes that the material has an immediate, critical application to their daily life, when they believe they need it to function socially or professionally, their engagement and retention rates skyrocket.
It's the difference between studying a map of a city you might visit 10 years from now versus studying a map of a city you are currently lost in.
That's a perfect analogy.
If you are lost, your brain is highly motivated to remember the directions.
The brain prioritizes information that it perceives as necessary for survival or social functioning. By framing these 10 structures as core needs, the source forces the learner to prioritize their acquisition above all other vocabulary.
It cuts out the fluff.
It's essentially telling the learner, put down the advanced grammar book, stop worrying about obscure vocabulary. Your immediate survival depends on these 10 items.
Oh.
It is a brilliant way to focus attention and drive the deep, repetitive practice required for true mastery. Because when you feel you need something, you will practice it until it becomes second nature.
Okay, so we have our overarching philosophy, master the essential daily dialogue. We have our psychological relief, focus only on the everyday beginner usage. And we have our manageable chunk, the 10 absolute necessities.
The foundation is set.
Now, we need to talk about what to actually do with them. Let's move to the second half of that title, which acts as the crucial next step in the methodology. The title continues with a direct command. Use them in real conversations.
The most important step.
This is the bridge from theory to practice. It is the command to take those 10 essential high-value structures and immediately thrust them into the messy, unpredictable world of live communication.
This is perhaps the most vital instruction in the entire source text, and I cannot overstate its importance. It addresses the single most common trap in all of language learning.
Which is?
The profound danger of passive learning. Millions of people around the world study English grammar for years. They consume materials, they watch videos, they fill out workbooks.
They do all the homework.
They can pass complex written exams, they can read advanced literature, and they can understand the rules perfectly on paper. But the moment they are placed in a live dialogue with a native speaker, they freeze.
I'm going to panic.
Their mind goes blank. They suffer from what we call the illusion of competence.
The illusion of competence. That's a powerful phrase. Let's unpack that for the listener. What exactly does that feel like?
Well, it's very deceptive.
I imagine it's that feeling when you are reading a textbook and you see an explanation for a grammar rule and you nod your head and think, yes, I understand that perfectly.
You highlight it in yellow.
You highlight the sentence, you feel a sense of accomplishment, and you close the book. You feel competent. But you haven't actually built the neurological pathway to produce that language.
Exactly. Recognizing a pattern on a page uses a completely different part of the brain than actively producing that pattern in real-time speech.
It's a different muscle.
The illusion is believing that understanding a rule on paper is the same as being able to execute it under pressure. The source text aggressively combats this illusion by explicitly directing the learner to use the language in real conversations.
It forces action.
It highlights a fundamental truth. Language is not a subject to be studied history or geography. It is a physical and cognitive skill to be performed, playing a sport or a musical instrument.
You have to actually do it.
And a skill can only be honed through active real-world execution. You cannot learn to play the piano just only reading books about the piano. You have to touch the keys.
I completely agree. Reading about how to swim is very different from jumping into the deep end of the pool. You can memorize all the mechanics of a freestyle stroke, but when you hit the cold water, your body has to know what to do instinctively.
Instinctively.
But here's where I have to ask a hard question on behalf of the listener.
Go right ahead.
Real conversations are incredibly challenging. They are terrifying for beginners. They do not follow a script.
They are completely unscripted.
The person you were talking to might speak too quickly. They might use slang you've never heard. They might change the subject unexpectedly, or there might be loud background noise. It is a chaotic, uncontrollable environment.
It is chaos.
So how does a beginner actually execute this command safely? How do you take these 10 foundational elements and anchor yourself when the conversation is moving at the speed of light? It feels the source is telling someone who can barely float to jump into the ocean.
That is a very valid concern. This raises an important question regarding the safety and confidence of the beginner. How does one transition safely from the quiet study room into the chaos of real conversations?
Without drowning.
Exactly. The strategy implied by the source's framework is not to understand everything happening in the ocean, but to use these 10 mastered verbs as your personal life rafts in that chaotic environment.
Life rafts.
Think about the progression we've discussed. You haven't just memorized these 10 items. You have mastered them. Because you have restricted your focus to just 10, and because you have mastered them to the point of automaticity, you do not have to think about how to use them.
They're just there.
They are ingrained in you. When the conversation gets complicated, when the native speaker talks too fast and you lose track of the details, you can rely on these deeply ingrained structures to express your core thoughts, ask for clarification, or navigate transitions.
Ah, I see. So it's not about controlling the whole conversation. It's about having reliable tools to manage your own contribution to it.
Precisely.
If the conversation spins out of control, you know you have these 10 solid, reliable actions you can use to express yourself clearly without needing to invent complex sentences on the fly.
You are not trying to construct complex, novel sentences while under pressure. You are simply deploying your mastered toolkit.
Deploying the toolkit.
The source is advocating for immediate real-world application while fully accepting that you will make mistakes. It is insisting that you use these specific anchors to build your communicative competence right now, today, rather than waiting for some imaginary day in the distant future when you achieve perfect fluency.
Because perfect fluency is a myth anyway.
Perfection is the enemy of progress. The goal is connection, not a flawless performance.
That requires a total shift in mindset. It's about changing the metric of success.
Yes.
If you judge your success by whether or not you made a grammatical error, you will always feel a failure and you'll stop speaking.
You will paralyze yourself.
But if you redefine success, if success is no longer scoring 100% on a written test, but instead success is successfully deploying just one of your 10 essential structures while buying a sandwich and having the cashier understand you, then suddenly you are winning every single day.
That is incredibly motivating.
It is. Now, to help the learner achieve this focus and execute this strategy, the source material includes one final, highly specific instruction. It is a visual cue.
The overlay.
Yes. The text describes an overlay that simply reads, phrasal verbs. This tells us that the material is likely presented in a visual medium, a video lesson, or a digital presentation, and this text is meant to be persistently visible on the screen. Why is this detail included in such a brief outline?
It's included because it's vital to the learning process. This brings us into the fascinating realm of multisensory learning and cognitive psychology.
Multisensory learning.
In modern educational design, particularly in digital environments, you can't just throw text on a screen randomly. Every visual element must serve a specific, calculated cognitive function.
Otherwise, it's just clutter.
If it doesn't serve a purpose, it becomes a distraction that actively harms the learning process. By specifying that this exact text must appear as a persistent overlay, the source is utilizing a powerful technique called visual scaffolding.
Visual scaffolding. Let's explain how this works in the brain.
When you, as a non-native speaker, are listening to a spoken explanation in English, your auditory processing center is working incredibly hard. It's trying to decode the sounds, separate the words, and find meaning.
It's exhausting work.
It is. By simultaneously placing the core concept on the screen as clear, static text, the instructional design engages your visual processing center at the same time. This creates what psychologists call a dual coding effect.
Dual coding. So you are receiving the information through two different channels, your ears and your eyes, at the exact same time.
Precisely.
Let's make this really concrete for the listener. Imagine you were driving down a massive, complicated highway system in a foreign country. You have a GPS giving you spoken directions, but the voice is speaking a language you are still learning.
That sounds incredibly stressful.
It's terrifying. You might miss a word. Now imagine having a large, clear road sign persistently floating in your field of vision, constantly reminding you exactly which route you are on and what your ultimate destination is.
It provides instant relief.
That overlay is the equivalent of that road sign. It's a visual anchor. In a digital learning environment, it is so incredibly easy for the mind to wander. You might get distracted by the speaker's tone of voice, or a noise outside your window, or you might just start worrying about a mistake you made earlier in the day.
We all do it.
That persistent visual overlay constantly pulls your attention back to the primary educational target. It ensures that no matter what else is happening, your brain never loses sight of the fact that the entire purpose of this current exercise is the mastery of these specific grammatical structures.
That's a fantastic analogy. If we connect this to the bigger picture of non-native language acquisition, we must recognize a harsh reality. A learner's attention is a highly limited resource.
Highly limited.
When you are processing a foreign language, you are expending immense mental energy just to survive the interaction. By providing a constant visual anchor, the overlay acts as an external memory aid.
An external memory aid.
Let's think of it as a cheat sheet. It offloads some of the cognitive burden from your internal working memory onto the external visual environment.
It frees up brain space.
It essentially says to your brain, you don't need to use your precious mental energy trying to remember the overarching topic we are discussing right now. I will hold that information for you right here on the screen.
That is so helpful.
You can relax that part of your brain and dedicate all your mental energy to actively listening and understanding the specific examples. It is a subtle but incredibly effective way to support the beginner's cognitive load. It prevents overwhelm and maximizes your focus on the immediate learning objective.
It's having a safety net. It allows you to focus on the acrobatic trick, actually understanding the spoken words, because you know the net is there to catch you if you lose your place.
Beautifully said.
It is truly remarkable how much deep pedagogical methodology is packed into such a brief source outline. We have spent this entire deep dive analyzing just a few lines of text, and we have extracted a comprehensive, scientifically backed strategy for language acquisition without even needing to examine a single specific vocabulary word.
Not a single one.
The source material has provided a literal masterclass in how to approach learning English intelligently, efficiently, and with deep compassion for the learner's experience. Let's synthesize what we have uncovered today so you, the listener, can take this and apply it immediately.
Yes, let's review the core strategy.
The strategy dictates that you must completely abandon the frustrating attempt to memorize the entire dictionary. Instead, you must focus aggressively and exclusively on everyday dialogue.
Everyday dialogue.
You must embrace the beginner mindset by rejecting the urge to use formal, complicated translations and instead favor natural, simple communication. You must severely limit your core list to exactly 10 absolute necessities to prevent information overload and ensure true automatic mastery. You must immediately take those 10 tools and apply them in the messy, unpredictable reality of live conversations, using them as your communicative life rafts. And finally, when you are studying, you should utilize visual focus tools, on-screen text, to maintain your cognitive discipline and reduce your mental fatigue.
The ultimate takeaway here, the golden thread running through this entire methodology, is a profound respect for the learner's journey.
Respect for the learner.
Learning a language is hard, it is vulnerable. But fundamentally, language is about human connection. It is about sharing your thoughts and understanding someone else's.
It's about people.
It is not about achieving flawless grammatical perfection to impress a teacher. The framework we have explored today respects your time, it deeply respects your cognitive limits, and it respects the immense psychological challenge of speaking a new language as an adult.
It acknowledges the struggle.
By prioritizing essential high-frequency structures and demanding their immediate use in real life, this methodology removes the artificial, intimidating barriers of traditional education. It places the power directly in your hands. It is a highly efficient, deeply practical roadmap to achieving natural fluency step by step, chunk by chunk.
Exactly. It's about working smarter, not harder. It's about giving yourself grace and focusing on what truly matters. As we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over.
Something to take with them.
Something to take with you as you continue your English learning journey today and tomorrow. I want you to consider your own native language. Think about the casual, everyday conversations you had today with your family, your friends, or your colleagues.
Pay attention to those interactions.
Try to remember the exact phrasing you used when you were just chatting in the kitchen or walking to the car. How many complex multi-word action phrases did you use completely automatically without ever thinking about their grammatical structure or their literal meaning?
Probably dozens.
You likely used dozens of them in the span of a few minutes. They are the invisible glue of your daily communication. You don't analyze them, you just use them. As you navigate your day tomorrow, look for those exact hidden moments in your own life.
Find those moments.
When you perform a common action or transition between activities, ask yourself, how would I express this exact casual moment naturally in English using one of my essential everyday tools?
Don't look for the textbook translation.
Don't look for the textbook translation. Look for the natural action. Find those moments, anchor yourself in those daily realities, and you will find your true path to mastery. Keep listening, keep speaking, don't be afraid to make mistakes, and we will catch you on the next deep dive.